Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome back to DCTV, where I'm your host, Drew Collins, bringing you all sports-related news in the greater Cincinnati area. If you are new around here and enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment for the next future video idea. If you already saw the title today, we'll be talking about Andy Dalton, his past, what just happened, and his future. So let's get in today's video. Now, I first off want to start this video by thanking Andy Dalton. If you're from the Cincinnati area, you know this guy has done a tremendous amount on the field, but even more off the field. So thank you for everything you've done to Cincinnati. So to get into things, I'm going to start with some Andy Dalton stats. In 2011, pick 35 in the NFL draft, the Cincinnati Bengals would select Andy Dalton from TCU. It would be a crazy thing because they'd end up pairing him with A.J. Green from Georgia to begin a dynamic duo for over the next decade. Andy Dalton would become the all-time Cincinnati Bengal leader for touchdowns at 204. Believe it or not, Andy Dalton leads Cincinnati for most career touchdowns in the entire NFL history. That's insane to me, and I feel like it's very underappreciated. His touchdown ratio ended up being 204 to 118, not the greatest, but not the worst. And he had an average passer rating of 87.5 through his career. Andy also rushed for 1,221 yards and also 22 touchdowns. And he was the second most in yards in Bengals franchise history at 31,594. Second, I said. That just blows my mind. Andy has the most fourth quarter comebacks at 20 and game-winning drives at 24. He is a three-time Pro Bowler in 2011, 2014, and 2016. And I'm gonna say it's crazy to think in the NFL how competitive you can be a Pro Bowler just a few years ago and now be battling for a spot to start in the NFL. That just blows my mind. Andy Dalton has had 2,757 completions over the past 9 years. He's played 137 games, having 70 wins and 65 losses with 2 ties, having a .518 winning percentage in Cincinnati. When I look over these stats, I think, wow, how could a player like this be so underrated? But for me, it's more underappreciated. I mean, this guy's put his heart and soul out there. And let's not act like the Bengals have tried their hardest to put out star players for him. I mean, the Bengals have had some pretty star-filled teams over the past few years, but Mike Brown over this past decade has been one of the most cheapest owners in NFL history, if not just the NFL of all sports. Major League Soccer, NFL, NBA, Mike Brown is known for being very cheap. As though we do know that he's been very different lately with this new Joe Burrow thing. He's been spending a ton of money, the third most in free agency this year, I believe. But over Andy Dalton's career, it just wasn't the same. When I look at Andy Dalton's win-loss ratio and all these stats that he's built up, I can't describe but to sit here and think like, wow, what the Bengals could have done, what they could have built around of. And obviously they're doing that now. They want to build around Joe Burrow. I'm not comparing Joe Burrow and Andy Dalton, but you don't need the best quarterback in the league to win a Super Bowl. I mean, at one point in time, Andy Dalton took the Cincinnati Bengals to 5 playoff appearances in a row. 5 years in a row. Now, the Bengals didn't win any single one of those playoff games. 5 years in a row. And it's just crazy to think. Just a few years ago, that's what that was. And now he's gone. That just amazes me. And to think theoretically, what would have happened if Andy Dalton would have won just one of those playoff games? What if that playoff game against the Steelers would have ended differently? Would the Bengals still have Andy Dalton on the team? Would they still have a lot of their star-studded players that they used to have on the team still? Would the roster even look like what it is now? There's always those questions you can ask yourself, but just being realistic, you got to look at what actually happened and what's happening now. And that's what I'm trying to do in this video. Looking back at it, it amazes me to think that Andy Dalton would be one of the best statistically rated quarterbacks wearing a Cincinnati Bengal uniform. And to think this is how it ends. I definitely did not think this is how it would end. But, life comes at you fast. And at the end of the day, the NFL is a business. And, if you have the cheapest owner or not, if he's trying to move into a new direction, there's going to be business moves made. And I'm going to get into that and why I think this was the best business decision for the Cincinnati Bengals moving on. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about, what is the best move? what is the best move the Cincinnati Bengals could have made for the current situation and for the future? They could have, one, traded Andy Dalton, they could have released him, or they could have kept him. Let's start with the first one, trading. For a long time, I kept harping on the Bengals because I wanted them to trade Andy Dalton. Looking back at it, the quarterback market, they wouldn't have got a single penny for Andy Dalton. And, you look at teams like the Patriots, Belichick, why wouldn't he just throw a 5th rounder to get Andy Dalton? That's because he knows that the Bengals don't have a choice but to release him to get cap space for Joe Burrow, knowing that Joe Burrow will get the starting spot. So then Bill Belichick or other teams can go get Andy Dalton for free, a veteran minimal or $1 to $5 million or whatever it may be, and not give up any draft picks or any players. So it's smart, and you got to look at other players. Look at Cam Newton, jobless, struggling to find a team to play for. And you can also look at other quarterbacks like Jameis Winston, who just threw for over 5,000 yards, leading the entire NFL, and now he's going to be a backup quarterback for the Saints. He's going to make less money than Joe Burrow is. Joe Burrow is going to make more money than Jameis Winston this year. And that's, for me, that amazes me because that's just how the NFL is. It really is a business. And no matter what you accomplished that last year, that next year you can be nobody. And not saying that's what Jameis Winston is, but to lead the league in, passing yards, and then the next year making $1 million when he was looking for $35 million. And now he's not even going to start. That's a whole nother subject that I'm not going to get into, but that's just putting it in perspective. So wrapping everything up with the trade topic, there's just no QB market for QBs like Andy Dalton. And it's similar to the running back market right now, where teams are being forced to have to pay these running backs, and teams are almost drafting rookies and letting that veteran-proved running back go because they don't want to pay him. That's also a whole nother topic. But now moving into the keep. I'm moving to that next. So yes, the Bengals could have kept Andy Dalton. And I had a lot of people in my previous videos about Joe Burrow and the Bengals saying they should. And I agree to disagree on this topic just because if Andy Dalton was on a veteran minimal $1 to $5 million deal, okay, I totally agree. Keep him, let Joe Burrow learn from him. Even if you start Joe Burrow, it's not bad to keep Andy Dalton on the team so he could say, hey, Joe, you could have done this read, or hey, you could have done this, you could have done that, to help Joe. But the salary Andy Dalton was on, I believe, was around $18 million. So to have a quarterback at an $18 million salary and ride the bench, that's almost like, you're the Cincinnati Bengals. You're not the Los Angeles Rams. The salary caps are totally different. You're not a huge organization. So if they could have reconstructed his contract, I guess they could have. But I just feel like the Bengals with this whole Joe Burrow thing is a new face and a new start. And they couldn't have had this refresher and this new start with Andy Dalton still on the team. So that's kind of my feeling for it. I definitely think they could have kept him, but I think it's just a better move to get rid of him. And now, what actually happened was them getting rid of him. And if you look at it, at first I was kind of like, okay, I wanted to trade, but this happened, that's okay. And then I saw the Bengals are saving like $17.7 million in cap space for releasing him. You look at the Bengals, and they're one of the most conservative with contracts. They can't even pay Joe Mixon. But, they're very conservative with contracts and signing these all-star players and extending and re-signing and franchise tagging. And then you see him just release Andy Dalton, a Pro Bowl quarterback, an all-time quarterback for the Bengals. And it's like, wow, they really are trying to build around Joe Burrow. And I'm not trying to compare Joe Burrow and Andy Dalton. But if you look at what the Bengals are doing, they are doing everything in their right to build around Joe Burrow. They spent the third most, I believe, in the NFL around Joe Burrow. They draft around Joe Burrow, and now they're getting $15 million to $20 million in cap space to continue building around Joe Burrow. After releasing that quarterback that he would have had to fight for a spot, I still think Joe Burrow would have won. And I think this all revolves around Joe Burrow. I know I'm saying his name a lot, but I seriously think that's why. And I think it's a super smart decision for the Bengals. They are all in. They have all their chips in. But it's that refresh that all Cincinnati fans needed. And finally, I'm going to get into the future of Andy Dalton. Where he can land, where he could go, what he could shape into. And I'm going to start with the Patriots. The Patriots are the super most popular vote right now where Andy Dalton can land. And like I said earlier, Bill Belichick wanting that system QB. Now, with any of these teams I'm going to name, I do believe there's a few things. It's going to have to be on a veteran minimal, like $1 to $5 million, maybe $10 million. I don't see it more than $5 million deal. Probably a 1-year deal. He's going to have to fight for the spot. On any of these teams, he's not going to be given it. He's going to have to fight for the spot. And those are probably my two things that I think all these teams have in common. So with the Patriots, he will fight for the spot. He probably will get it. And two, I think it'll be a cheap deal, a 1-year deal where Belichick can say, hey, prove yourself, lead us to some wins, and we can see what we can do next year. I don't think he'd be on that team next year, but we could see. Then we move into the Bears. I saw the Bears name in there, but they just got Nick Foles and his huge contract on the team. You have Mitch Trubisky, who is a flop. They could put him on that team. Once again, it'd have to be a cheap deal with Nick Foles' huge contract. I believe Trubisky's rookie contract is coming up this next year or two, and then he would also have to fight for that playing time. I don't see it happening. Now, my second team that I think he could go to is the Jaguars, and here's my reasons why. Once again, cheap deal. Two, you have Gardner Minshew, and it's very interesting for me because Gardner Minshew is on his rookie deal, so that means they can afford another cheap deal like Andy Dalton, and that gives Gardner Minshew someone to fight for that starting spot. And I think that's very intriguing because you want a young player who I think he was a 6th, 5th, 4th rounder, a late round player who got thrown into the starting position all of a sudden. And he was put into a tough situation, and now he thinks it's all his. You throw a player like Andy Dalton in there, and then you got someone, taking the position away possibly, and then Gardner Minshew having to learn from him, or at least just have someone in there to battle for that, starting spot. I think it's something interesting, and I could see the Jaguars doing it. I mean, you got to look at the Jaguars locker room. Technically, they don't even really have one. You have you have players who are already gone. You have players who want to be gone, and you have the few players that are still there, like Leonard Fournette, who I think wants to be gone. But the trade market for running backs are terrible right now. So why not if you're the Jaguars? What do you have to lose? That's my opinion. I have two more. I have the Broncos, who I think would be another intriguing spot. Cheap deal, fight for the starting spot. You have another young and upcoming quarterback in Drew Lock. Personally, I think Broncos fans are all in on Drew Lock. From Twitter and just other social medias, I mean, they just love this Drew kid. And I just don't see them shying away from him. But I think Andy Dalton would be good competition. And even if he doesn't take that spot, let Drew learn from him. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, and he leads an organization in touchdowns in franchise history. You can't out-teach that. That's just something that's built in, that he's done, that he will have that veteran presence to help Drew grow, or any of these young quarterbacks. And last but not least, I heard some disturbing, theoretical, pretty realistic news saying he could be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Yeah, I don't think this could happen. I wouldn't want this to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But I keep hearing Andy Dalton could be a Pittsburgh Steeler. It better not happen. I don't think it will. So wrapping everything up, I want to once again thank Andy Dalton and his career he's had as a Cincinnati Bengal and the class act that he is, which I believe is another appealing reason for teams to go after this guy. He's been a total class act in Cincinnati. Not one off-field problem of this guy. Besides a few years ago, I think he drove off of a gas station and took the gas pump with him. That's like the only bad thing I've seen Andy Dalton do, and that's just a human mistake. I mean, that's nothing even crazy. But for the Bengals and the organization, it was the best business move made, and I think it's just another step into the right direction of a new face of the franchise, a refresher for the fans, and just a time to move on for a whole new decade of Cincinnati Bengal football. So that's why I think this is why everything turned out to what it be with Andy Dalton. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and comment another video idea for the future. Don't forget, Saturdays and Tuesdays at noon. Stay you, stay true. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah, I think about you all day, and at night I watch the stars shoot. I know love is not a game, but I can't control what my heart do. I fucked up so many times, I know you thinking